Most people don't know how to store lithium batteries properly, but I can show you how. With the Star-Batt, we've got lithium iron phosphate batteries in here. It's a much safer chemistry than lithium ion. Doesn't explode like those horror stories we've all seen in the past where the little riding scooters catch on fire. Lithium iron phosphate is very safe, and if you maintain them properly, you can extend the life of them 3 times as long, which adds up to years of use. Lithium iron phosphate batteries have an internal discharge rate where they will slowly lose charge over time. That's not a fault of the batteries, it's just the way they're manufactured and the way their chemistry works. So one of the things we want to talk about is long-term storage. What do you do? What should I do with my Star-Batt if I'm going to store it for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or it's stored forever and I only use it for emergency situations? What you're going to want to do is charge it up fully before storing it. And you can verify it's full by looking at the battery gauge. If you press the center button once, it'll show you that have a little A right there, and that is showing you the amps going into the battery. So plug your Star-Batt in and leave it plugged in until you get less than 0.1 amps on the battery indicator, and that'll indicate to you that the batteries no longer want to charge. It normally charges at about 5 amps, but when it drops down to less than 0.1, it's kind of negligible, and you can disconnect, and then you know you're fully charged up. That's important because the battery gauge cannot tell, it only measures, it can only capture the power leaving and entering the Star-Batt. It can't measure the internal discharge rate of the batteries. So if you have it stored for 2 months and it was 100% when you initially stored it, when you pull it out 2 months later, it'll still show 100% here, but that the batteries are not at 100%. And so even though it's at 100%, you can still go to that amp reading, plug it in, you'll see power going into the Star-Batt, and once that drops down to below 0.1 amps, you'll know that the batteries are fully charged and the battery gauge is indicating 100%, and you have synced the two of those together. So long-term storage, how often should you charge it, and what is that internal discharge rate? For what we recommend with these is every 1 to 2 months, plug it in, recharge it to full by monitoring it, or you can just plug it in for 5 to 6 hours. That should be more than enough to even charge it from completely drained. Then once it's fully charged, you verified it, you can put it back in storage, it's good to go. What we're trying to prevent there is over discharging the cells in the lithium iron phosphate batteries. What can happen with that internal discharge rate is if it's never, the batteries are never topped off, it'll slowly discharge down to 0. Well, the batteries have a safe operating voltage. The batteries all have a BMS, a battery management system. That controls overcharging, under voltage protection. So if they get too low, it disconnects the batteries from the load, and a bunch of other safety features. But that under voltage protection, where it disconnects the batteries from the load, it can't disconnect the batteries from the internal self-discharge. That's just the nature of the battery chemistry. And so you're gonna wanna top them off every 1 to 2 months, just fully charge them. And then you'll know that you're not gonna over self-discharge them. Other than that, we recommend don't leave them plugged in. Once they're fully charged, unplug them and store them. Don't just leave them on the charger all the time. It just kind of adds unnecessary stress to the charger and the batteries themselves. It's okay for them to cycle down and then cycle up. If the Star-Batt is fully charged and it's showing that it's not taking any more charge and your charger's plugged in and it's working properly, you can go to percentage, and if you hold down the left button, it sets it to 0, and if you hold down the right button, it sets it to 100%. So you can't set it in between that, but you can set 0 and 100%. If you can verify through the amp indicator that your Star-Batt is fully charged, it doesn't want any more charge, but say the battery gauge only says 85, you can calibrate that by holding down the right arrow percentage button to go to full, or the left arrow to go to 0. That gets into also the life cycles of lithium iron phosphate batteries. Our batteries are roughly 600 watt hours, and over time that capacity diminishes. So one of the things that you can do to extend the life of your batteries for years longer is by recharging at say 50%, going back to full, and then down to 50% and then back to full, as opposed to going all the way to 0% and then recharging fully. If that's called depth of discharge. And if you have 100% depth of discharge where you're drawing this battery down all the way, you're going to get 2,500 cycles roughly out of these batteries. 2,500 cycles is a lot. If you think about this, runs for 24 hours, that's 2,500 days, that's years. But if you go down to 70% depth of discharge, where there's still 30% left, and then recharge, you get up to like 3,600 cycles out of the batteries. And then even more, if you only go down to 50% depth of discharge, you actually extend the life of these batteries to upwards of 7,500 cycles. And so you're almost 3 times as much cycles of these batteries if you only go 50% depth of discharge. One of the things that makes that possible is with our solar. If you're using the Star-Batt Mini out in a hunting camp or emergency situation or whatever, if you have that solar panel plugged in, it'll run all night long off the battery. It'll get down to, you know, maybe 50%, and then all day long it'll recharge. And so the best case for these batteries is to run it where you only go down to 50%. The solar panel makes that possible. You just leave it out in the sun, assuming there's good sun, not cloud cover, raining, all those sort of things. But that's an easy way to keep the charge level up. Other than that, store it in a nice, cool, dry place. Batteries don't like heat. You don't want to leave it in, you know, your attic. That's 120 degrees all summer long. You know, it's probably not great for it. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, reach out, and happy to answer them as best we can. Thanks for watching.